Soccer too?
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, it's important to be at that age and mature. And he certainly is. He's mature beyond his years, and he has a huge upside. And we're really excited. This is an exciting day for him, certainly, his first professional contract. For our club, it's an exciting day because it's our our youngest and first academy signing directly from the academy, which makes a positive statement about the direction that our academy and T2, that development pathway, is headed. And it's an exciting day for me as well because I like, young players. I've developed a couple dozen when I was at Akron that went on to the pros, and up until this point, we really haven't had a guy in the pipeline that we could bring in and cultivate and eventually help him succeed. And I think it's a seminal moment for the club, for the academy, and for our development pathway.
What did you notice in him? What stood out, and when did you guys first start thinking about signing him?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that we've had a club 5 years, and we've really only had academy for 3 years. And you see signings from time to time, homegrown signings around the league, and a lot of them don't make it, and so that does us no good, and so we wanted to be really careful in those signings because they can help you, but we want to make sure they really have the potential to make it and to come up through. And looking at Marco, he plays in a role where we're not deep, and so there'll be an opportunity for him to get reps and to eventually step in. Where in some of the other roles, a young player might be, talented, but they're blocked by 2 or 3 or 4 guys in front of them. And in certain roles, the 10 and the striker position, those are positions where we usually go and buy guys. And it's difficult for a young player to crack into those roles, but when you look at an outside back or a holding mid, players should have a real opportunity in those positions. And that was a big factor. One, we felt Marco was good enough to come through. And two, we felt like there'd be a real opportunity to be that 2 or 3 guy in our depth chart very quickly. It will be up to him, and what he makes of this opportunity. But it's partly up to us as well because we need to give him every chance to succeed. And to succeed, that means he needs to be close enough to the first team where he's getting training reps, where he's around the guys, he's in the locker room, and he starts to feel comfortable, and he gets minutes in games. Because again, you can't block a young player and not allow him the chance to get in there. But up until this point, we haven't had guys in the pipeline that we felt were good enough. And it's only because we've only had an academy for 3 years and a T2 for 2 years. And I don't think this will be the only signing we make. Most likely there'll be a couple more, 1 or 2 more signings directly from T2. We have 3 or 4 guys we're really excited about there as well. So it's kind of a youth movement, and I think again that's why I firmly believe this is a good time for the club because you're going to see more and more young players come in. That's something I'm excited about. That's something I want. We just haven't had the opportunity until now to do that.
Do you have to remind yourself sometimes with him that he's only 17?
Yeah, and that's a good thing. That means he's going to have a chance because when you look at a player, you have to look at everything. The role, you have to look at their body, and predict a little bit. At 17, what is he going to be at 20? 21, 22, and he's a strong body for 17, mature, but wiry. He's going to continue to get stronger, and athletically, we like what he brings. He's technical, and that's an important thing. At 17, you start to see a plateau in the development of a player technically, and so he has that foundation. And he's functional in a role. That's really important. A lot of guys love these grid players that don't have a role. I call them grid players because they're great in a grid, but they don't really have a position. And Marco's a specialized player that's been trained in a role functionally. He's left-footed. and he knows how to play left back. He's played left back with Andrew Greger in our academy, and obviously with Larry, and been groomed on our system. And he played there, I think it's 19 or 20 games with T2, every single game. So these are all factors that go into us signing, and the last one's mentally. We've had him in training, and for a 17-year-old kid, he doesn't look in awe of it. And that's a huge thing. There's a lot of guys that come in and they look really, even a lot of the college guys we've had, they've never settled, and it's hard to sometimes because, they're playing with big-time players, in some cases, players that have played in the top leagues of the world, and, they look like a deer in headlights. And Marco's been with us on several occasions. We wanted to see how he would respond. This week, it's like he's been with us forever. And that's a really good thing from a mentality standpoint. That he's young but mature, confident in himself, and looks like a guy that's not in awe of it.
You said, eventually be a guy that steps in, but a guy that could get minutes. I mean, do you see him as getting minutes, pushing for starts in games like U.S. Open Cup next year?
Yeah, and that's why I think we made the decision now. We could have waited. He was going to go to UP. And we just felt, why wait another year? When we looked at our depth chart, obviously there's no mystery this year. We've really struggled, in the left back position to settle on a guy after Jorge. And I'm hesitant to make comparisons. I wouldn't want to put that on Marco to call him the next Jorge, but he's very similar, and just the way he plays. He's technical and quick, and feisty and strong, and so he fits a similar profile, and yet we have Vitas, that can kind of be the one in the depth chart, and then Marco, we're going to bring him into preseason and give him the opportunity perhaps to step in that 2 spot, and that'll mean he's going to get rotated in preseason games, and we'll see how he responds. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves, and I don't want to put a timeline on how long it's going to take for him, because it depends a little bit on how he flourishes and matures over time. But that was a part of why we signed him now. We signed him at 17. He's going to make a huge jump in the next year, in the next 2 years and 3 years. You wait another year, you lose somewhat of a year to kind of bleed him in and get him close to the guys, get him close to the first team, throw him in a game, whether it's a preseason or an Open Cup, and see how he does. And we have time now to slow drip him into our club. And then again, it's going to be up to him. There's never a guarantee on young players. You never know. But we wouldn't have signed him unless we felt like he would have the chance to eventually crack it.
When you look around the league, seems like there's a lot of teams having a lot of success with their homegrown players. Dallas is the first one that comes to mind generally. Is that something that you guys are aiming toward?
Yeah, that's always been a priority. People forget, Dallas has been around a long time, and they've had an academy for a long time. And they do have a much different landscape and market, so, everybody can talk about, how great this and that is, but, we're just beginning this process. It's something I feel very strongly about. Coming here, I felt very strongly about, having young players in the club, and you can't have them in unless you have ones that are good enough. It's that simple. And we knew it would take some time for the academy to get going, and getting a guy like Larry, Sunderland here with the experience he has, having Andrew Greger in the academy, and then now taking over T2. We felt like there was a huge jump this year, just in every aspect of where we're at, and for the first time we feel like we have some real irons in the fire, some guys in the pipeline, and you should have 2 or 3 in the pipeline every single year with every single class. And you may not sign them all, they all may not make it, but you should have a few guys that you're looking at, and we have that now with all the way down to 14s, the 16s, the 18s, and then now with T2, and that's exciting. And so I think it just took time. Development, youth development is two things. It's time and environment. It's that simple. Well, we finally have the environment, and we finally had now enough time to start to get players to come through. And 10 years from now, hopefully we are at Dallas, because that's kind of where they're at. They're 10 years ahead of us, and it has nothing to do with coaches not wanting to play guys, GMs not wanting to play guys, philosophies or anything. It has to do with you need time, you need the environment, you need the infrastructure, and eventually you start to have players that are good enough. And when coaches have players, young players that are good enough, then you play them. If you don't, you can't play them. There's no players to play. It's kind of that simple. So, I'm hoping 10 years from now that, we have 3, 4, 5 guys that are homegrown guys that are in our starting lineup. That's what we want. And, I've been a guy with the U18 national team. I've been a guy with in college. I want young players. But it's just taking time to get young players that we felt were good enough. And it's an exciting day to have a guy that, I can get my hands on and groom, and I want him to be in there, but I'm not going to throw him in until he's ready.